3d6 down the line.
Okay, that was episode 58 in the books. Another successful one. Well done, guys. Good stuff.
Thanks, John.
Anything to add?
That was fun, man. That
was a good one.
Dragons scare me so much. God. I don't know if just like the thought of being face to face. I was telling these guys earlier. I really felt like the kids in the truck in Jurassic Park with the T-Rex like looking in and the big eye.
Yeah,
John, you did such a great job making that dragon scary.
Yeah, you like that guy? Yeah. I was trying to get a point across.
No, I don't like him at all.
Well, I was trying to convey that I wanted to. What was I? I was trying to convey how powerful he was. Everyone knows that dragons are powerful, but in these past two episodes, I also wanted to try to unlearn what you've sort of learned about D&D dragons, and that this is not the like. I don't run dragons like if you had previous knowledge of what dragons were like in the old monster manual or any addition to D&D, you should be well aware now that this dragon does not operate like that. When I like to, I don't run dragons that often. I think a lot of people actually probably don't run very powerful dragons in their games. Lots of dungeons and Dungeons and Dragons, but very few dragons. They're like God in my mind. They're like godlike powers. There's very few things that are more powerful than them. But what I find so interesting about them is that they're incredibly powerful, but extremely narrow-minded. So all of that extreme godlike intelligence is focused on a singular thing. You do not take what is mine, and all I want is their whole thing is I want things, you know what I mean? And how scary that would be.
Thief, I smell you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm probably more influenced in fantasy by Tolkien than anything else. So, like my idea of a dragon is heavily flavored by Smaug and all the things that Tolkien himself was inspired by, like Beowulf and those kind of things.
Siegfried and
Siegfried,
Fafnir the dragon, right? Is that his name?
Exactly, Fafnir. Yeah.
Or no, Fafnir's the serpent around the Midgard serpent. Is that right?
I think Fafnir was the dragon, the ring. I don't know. Someone will tell us, I'm sure.
Yeah,
someone will be glad to tell me in the comments.
You experts, you.
I was a little confused when you said that you didn't run dragons the way we thought. Are you talking more like, say, like a Dragonlance dragon, where they're just kind of like people, but they're dragons and they're super powerful? Like you kind of lean away from that, right?
I try to, yeah. I mean, I like the Dragonlance dragons, and I think they were a great novelization of what the stat blocks of first edition dragons were. Really leaning into that whole chromatic versus metallic angle, which is really super cool.
That's a great idea.
I kept like the chromatic angle of Crostonistrix, but if any of you out there, audience members who own Arden Vool, if you're tracking Crostonistrix's stat block, you can just throw that out the window because I am not using that. In my mind, if you guys wanted to front with him, I would come up with a stat block. But at this stage in your career, basically what he is he is a puzzle to be solved. He is not a monster to be defeated in combat.
So we have to rethink Mike's plan.
Well, no, I'm saying eventually that might be the case. But it's similar to like the Hobbit, right? Like Bilbo was able to defeat the problem by thinking outside the box, sort of thing, right? And even then, with the way that the dragon was slain was because of a noticed weakness, right? That was exploited by Brand or Bard. I can't remember which one. Brand? Bard. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like I kind of hold true to those sort of myths that recur about dragons, if I can help it. So just be aware.
One thing that's interesting. So like my background, I played a lot of 5e, but all of OSE is new to me. I never played as a kid. I never got the chance. I didn't have the right nerdy friends to play with me. My box set is still unused from when I got it when I was 10. But what's interesting is like, okay, I know a lot about 5e dragons. I know how I know how those stat blocks work. I know how all that stuff. But this whole other thing it's as frightening and as unknown to me as I imagine it would be for Avaricios and like the real people in there.
Sure. Yeah.
And the same thing for all of these other monsters. Like, you know, you guys have like some familiarity. Oh yeah, we fought carrion crawlers before. I know what they do and blah, 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 blah. I have no clue what these old school monsters do. They're all terrifying to me. And I like that because that's what these characters would really feel looking at this. Not like, oh yeah, I know that, yeah, this guy has a weakness to this, blah, 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 blah. And so it's kind of fun. And I think it's a real plus for people who are migrating from some of these newer systems and discovering, you know, things like OSE all anew is this gift of ignorance, you know, because you don't know stuff. And so they're all scary.
Sure.
Which is what they're supposed to be.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of cool.
Well,
the thing about that's interesting though, Matt, is maybe I'm misremembering this, but from my like small days when I was, you know, sitting there poring over the monster manual and the Fiend Folio and things like that, is it was never the hit points or the armor class or anything else of those basic monster stats that were the killer. It was the abilities that they had to go along with it. And the monsters wouldn't have 6 abilities. I mean, a ghoul's big thing is the paralysis, right? And in modern 5e, like all my players are basically like, oh, ghoul paralysis, oh, I'm immune to ghoul paralysis, blah, blah, you know, it's like right over their heads. And I'm like, you guys don't even know. You don't even know like how dangerous that is in an old school adventure, like in an old school, like, and I hate that phrase old school, but I'm forced to use it. But in like in a retro clone or whatever, how dangerous something like ghoul paralysis is to a party.
Yeah.
And then,
And to your point, Mike, too, like the fact that most monsters don't have like a whole suite of abilities. That's what made dragons especially terrifying, because they did.
Yeah,
they had a whole ton of, they have throughout the editions, right? Like a ton of shit that they could do. Like on top of like all the physical aspects and the breath weapon, most of them were spellcasters too.
Yeah,
which is probably the reason why they had, you know, front limbs so that they could manipulate spell components or whatever that, you know, stupid reason, but whatever. Right. But yeah, absolutely. I would think too that the one thing like Matt, you would been able to take from any modern edition back to the basic, you know, one thing that remains true throughout the editions was the breath weapons of the different chromatics and the metallics too, but mostly the chromatics. But other than that, everything is probably like a mystery. Even the breath weapon, the gas, the poison gas, like you don't have any conception of how strong that is. Like what is the amount? And you guys could probably look that up in OSE and discover it. But once again, I've wiped out the stat block. I'm not using OSE's default, and I'm not using the Osric first edition one that is printed in Arden Vool as well. It's my own stat block based on other material that I've got Cross and Israel for. But at this point, I don't even have it. It's nowhere in my notes. It's nowhere up in front of me during these past 2 sessions, because I would have ruled, like, if you had tried to commit violence against him, it just would, the moment that it became his turn, first of all, you would have missed everything. You know what I mean?
We're just dead.
And then the next turn, I just would have said you all die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just breathe and you're dead. Like, I wouldn't even
very
roll.
Convenient.
Makes things very.
Well,
quick.
I will say.
So, John, I know that you're really, really busy. If it would help, we could come up with this stat block for the dragon for you, just to save you some time.
I got the stat block. I'm just saying I didn't bring it out for these 2 sessions.
I see.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, to Matt's point about
offer still stands.
To Matt's point about, like, you know, ignorance and not knowing. I mean, it's been a long time since I played original D&D, and I don't often go through the books anymore. And a lot of this is like, I've just forgotten it all, and it's all ignorance to me again.
Sure.
And I remember when we were playing the Hole in the Oak. Speaking of ghoul paralysis, I lost multiple characters to the ghouls in that corner. And the first time that
was
happened,
right there with you.
I remember feeling just like, what? Like, that was so not 5e. It was a big shocker.
Hole in the Oak was the crucible of fire for
it
OSR.
totally was.
Yeah.
And it makes the XP hit that you take playing an elf totally worth it.
Yeah.
Because that that is a first level party like TPK moment right there. When two ghouls pop out, and you're just like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly.
This was like 5 ghouls, as I recall, and I don't think we ever got past them. Like, there's just a bunch of corpses there now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anybody playing a Hole in the Oak, the corpses in that hallway, they're us.
That's us. Yep.
So his Kroz's last line about don't call me a lord. I don't, that it assumes a relationship, that I lifted that from, and I'm not gonna say it right now. I want to leave it as a nice little scavenger hunt for the people out there. There is a well-known seminal recent OSR work by someone very famous where I lifted that from. And if you can find out where that line is from, I will be very, very impressed. Let me know in the Discord or in the comments if you find that out. But I love that line when I read it, and I was like, oh my God, this is Kroz. This is exactly the way that he thinks, So, yeah. That's how powerful he is. He doesn't even need subjects. Yeah. He's just a harvester of souls. You know what I mean? It's just like, whoa, he's so badass.
Every offer that we made, right? Every offer that we made was just like, what?
No,
what?
No susceptibility to charming
you can't help me.
Smooth talking. He didn't care at all. There was nothing we could offer him.
Yeah,
we couldn't even flatter him.
He's just lonely, and he needs Darius to try and seduce him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, David, whenever you brought up the how he might be offended by the 3,000 gold piece offer from Estelle, it's not even that he was offended. It's like, so if there's 6,000 solidi down there, which is around how much is down there, right? If they had offered him 5,999, he would have been just as offended as if you had offered him 3,000. Right. It's because even if you had offered him the 6,000, he still would have been offended and laughing at you, because to him, it's not theirs to offer to him. It was always his. Right. And if you try to withhold a single penny from him, that you just spelled your own doom. Right. Basically. So, yeah.
Well, and it's a great, possibly orthogonal to the level of power he has, right? It's also just very interesting to consider that his lifespan has a pretty significant relationship with everything that's gone on in this empire, in this space, and figuring that out in a more specific fashion could be very useful to us, whether we ever talk to him again or not. But, what has he observed?
Yeah. And we remember we're going to have to look it up again, but we read the book that talked about the dragon eggs and this whole history of, the Arcontians messing with the dragons, and it was like a hostage thing with the eggs or something.
Yeah, exactly. There was that's actually the start of their calendar. The start of their calendars with the Compact of Ennius, which was like a deal that the Arcontians made with Dragonkind. Yeah, Ted, you were going to say something?
I'd have to go back and look at the notes, but if my recollection is that we don't really know what happened with the whole egg thing, right? But let's just speculate that Arden and Vul, in fact, did get the egg and did lock it away, and the golden rod is the key to getting the egg back. Like, it's a key, literally, like it opens something. You put the rod in and the egg pops out, something like that. That would be very interesting, wouldn't it?
Possibility.
I love it. Right. Whether it's true or not, I had a lot of fun on the Discord this week, obviously, doing exactly that.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I know. It's whether it has a function that is germane to Cross, or it is, again, his motivation doesn't necessarily have to be that, as we discussed on the Discord. It's just that he's greedy. Though we determined it was magical, right? Yes. That was a mistake in my memory. So for anyone who is listening, we did determine it was magical. So fascinating, right? It could just be another wand we've never thought of before. You know what I mean? But
it's true.
but it could be also something really significant to the world. And whether it is or not, what's exciting is that there are so many serpentine, no pun intended, connections between not only the cultures of Arden Vul, but the aliens and the sort of geography and everything else and the various creatures, in a way that it's very apparent to me. I think we understood that on some level, and I don't want to say that the dragon fucking with us is like a total, like, we should have never seen it coming thing. Obviously, we thought about it when we were talking about bringing the gold out. But the idea that the dragon would have, or Cross would have any relationship both with Estelle and Cronus beyond just like, please don't kill us, and possibly anyone else within the world space is never something that occurred to me until now. And now I'm going, well, fuck, what else is going on? You know?
Right.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. So, you know, what we were kind of talking about was initially we thought that gold rod, and this was the one that Varger found on our way up. It was like the second or third episode or whatever, really early on. So we've been dragging this thing around forever. And what we didn't realize, and, you know, just, you know, through player communication or whatever, is the second episode, was that the thing was indeed magical. So in some of the times that we've taken all of our stuff out and cast detect magic, we just never communicated well. Oh, the rod is in the mix or whatever.
Or I just forgot.
When we first started talking with Cross about this rod, we were like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. Like, we can duplicate it, we can, you know, measure it, we can make it, you know, whatever. But then when we found out that this is magical, right? Like, it changed the ballpark, you know, changed the whole conversation about the thing, even to the point, and we haven't talked about this. Now that we know the thing is magical, we can have it identified, right? And we can find out what the thing really is without question. So we don't have to speculate anymore about what it might be.
True.
As long as we can get it to somebody who can cast identify.
True. Yep.
Mike, you go first.
I was just going to say, we had that rod when we did our big the one and only downtime that we had in Gosterwick, where we got everything identified and we got everything like detect magic. I almost feel like we got to go back and watch that episode, because were we all wrong about the magic? I mean, all of us remember that it was not magical until John corrected us. So I'm like, did we mess that up like way back in the day? Like, or is it sitting there in like episode 5 somewhere, whatever it would be? You know, I can't imagine that if we actually had it identified, we would be in this pickle. I still think it's a key. I still think it's a magical key. I don't think it's going to be like a immovable rod or some other like magical item like that. I think it's going to be something that acts as something else.
I don't think we need to retcon anything, because we can just move forward from here, because you even not knowing what it was, you still held on to it, right? So you still have it. You know it's valuable. So yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say, maybe this is a good like meta conversation, because I don't remember that either, Mike. I know that what emotionally remember feeling is like protect and like don't tell people, which is generally how I respond to a lot of this stuff. That may not be true, but as a result, I would not be surprised if at the time I did not, because we were first learning our bookkeeping at that time too. I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't offer it up as something we identified. But it's a great example where, look, whether John remembers or not, it's a great example of like getting to a point where some information isn't game breaking to just sort of like clarify behind the screen, right? Like it's not useful to either of us possibly if we like speculate ad infinitum about a thing, whether we did or not, if neither of us can remember, right? It helps us to just be like, look, it's not, or it is, right?
That's what I ended up doing in the Discord. And I'm fairly sure that it was my fault. I think that you probably cast detect magic, and I either didn't realize that you had it on you, or I just assumed without looking at the block that it wasn't magical. But now here's the correction, and we'll just move forward from there. So it's magical.
No, of course. but the point I'm making, just as like a table conversation, the only reason I added that was like, what does it matter, right? Like, if I'm the DM or the player in that situation, why kill myself over that when that level of information transfer is something that just like makes the game easier and still doesn't really solve any riddles? It just like focuses a little bit mutually, right? And I think that's really awesome, because I think that's a hard decision to make for anyone involved, right? Especially after like a couple years of a campaign. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, there's nothing to say that we can't Bilbo Baggins that fucker later on. Like, okay, so killing Crass is a non-starter. We're pretty smart. That dragon flies around an awful lot. We could probably do like a Ninja Strike Force team on his nest and grab that rod back if we really wanted to. If we decide at some point that it's going to be worth that kind of risk. Did you guys decide to give it to him or not? I don't even know.
We
we're
haven't
taking the
fully
horde
decided.
and I thought we fully decided that we were taking the rod and the horde. Because if we do one or the other, the dragon's pissed, and there's no point in giving one and not the other. In other words, like if we interrupt the horde and any word comes back that we do so, even like in a portion, like then because Cods knows how much is in there, and if Cods is alive and he gets there and there's only some of it, they saw us come up.
That's an important point. You guys got to but there are holes in your knowledge though about this because you don't know what Cods told everybody else about how much was there. Right. So it all stems from Cods. Cods was the source of all accurate information. Right. But you don't know how much he actually told people that was there. So therefore, if Cods deceived them in any sort of way or just didn't tell them everything, just said like there's a huge vault down there, do you want a piece? Then it's likely that Krasnistrex also doesn't know how much is down there. Right. So it all depends upon what knowledge you're kind of basing your that on, and what you decide to do when you actually get to the vault, and what you do, how you plan to actually handle that money.
And we can always change your mind. I do want to clarify something though, because that's a very interesting nugget I'm going to stick on, John. The conversion rate between Solidai and gold is what? We've been talking about this as 80 or 60 now.
It's time tense.
So how much Solidai? There's 6,000 Solidai.
6,161.
There's 6,000 there.
Yeah.
And we know that Cross has been offered 3,000, a 50% stake.
Well, not 3,000 Solidai necessarily.
Yes.
I thought that's what it was. Literally,
Might have been 3,000 gold pieces that he was offering.
No, I'm sorry. I would have made that clear at the conversation, Ted. It was 3,000 Solidai.
Which
So
is
she was
why
offering it out there.
It's out.
which is why I'm putting a pin in this. Again, GM's not deceiving us, right? I'm just saying, like, hey, there's really useful information that we can backtrack from. If Conus and Estelle and Cods were willing to give 3,000 Solidai, what percentage of a known or unknown amount would they be willing to give to the thing that could kill them? That's 50%, right? Are they telling him it's 80%? Are they telling him it's 90%? Are they telling me it's 50%? They're probably never going to offer less than 50%. He'd kill them outright, right? So when John proposes, like, well, we don't really know what he told them, I would suggest, without any confirmation, but I would suggest that he probably told him a decent figure. If he shaved any off the top, I don't think it's a huge percentage, right? Because to do so would totally fuck up the deal with the dragon, in my mind. But again, I could be totally wrong. I'm just saying we can reverse that logic to some degree with what we don't know.
One of the things we don't know is where has Cods been. He hasn't been around the inn. He hasn't been instructing the Wine Dark cohort. So he could very well be in the vault right now, trimming off the part he didn't tell anybody about and hiding it somewhere. Then we're going to have to find where he put it.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to mention about the golden rod, and whether it's there's all sorts of options, but the thing, and again, it's a thing we don't know, is does Kraz want it because it's a thing that's magic and gold and he's a dragon, or does he know what it is and what it does? Right? If he just wants it for his horde and he throws it on top of the pile, yeah, maybe we could Bilbo Baggins it. If he's like, no, I actually want that because it gets me the eggs. Or if I put this thing into the forehead of the statue of Vul, the whole city turns into a giant mecha robot, stands up and walks off. And
he controls the fleet of starships,
dude.
The alien dragon is running a fleet of automated AI fucking starships and carpet bombing us. We don't know, man.
We don't know.
Well, he seemed. I will point out, if in case my portrayal didn't convey it, when Avaricios offered, when he asked about like what use it has or if we could do something with it, the dragon seemed like highly amused. He's like, use, like what, I don't give a shit about his use. It's mine. That's what I care about. Yeah.
I interpret that he's going to throw it on the pile.
My suspicion.
He may have also just been like, we're not talking about this because you're a gnat and I'm a dragon, and
very true. Very true.
Not the point. Bring me the gold,
that too,
buddy.
Yeah.
I think there's three factors here. What you just said, right? It doesn't matter. It's mine, right? It's totally valid at face value. Another factor is he doesn't know what it's used for. It's just loot, right? So he could be being honest and still omitting, or he could just be ignorant himself. But the other factor is he says, if this is true, again, he can lie to us, right? But if it's true that his minions are the one that lost this, what did his minions know if his minions knew anything about this? And who were his minions, right? So the question is not just what does Cross know about it, but what would anyone who might want to take it from Cross know about it? And if they would, what was the situation that would lead to that sort of a risky endeavor? Right, like I'm going to betray the guy I know could probably kill me and take this away, and then I'm going to die anyway because he's going to fucking swoop in and eat my head off. Right, I'm going to drop it in a pit. No. But I knew that this was the thing that got me power over him. Otherwise, I would never risk it. That's the deduction I'm talking about. Doesn't mean it's true, right? But like, what would make you betray the dragon as we do it right now? That's the question to be asking. It doesn't matter whether he knows or anyone else did. It matters that they thought it was sufficiently worthwhile, if in fact that's what was going on, which we can't even be certain of either. Go, Mike.
The one thing that is telling for me about this whole thing is that if it had a use that he wanted it to be used for, and that use has anything to do with like being in the dungeon, we know that he can't go in the dungeon. He can't get down a single stairwell. He can't get into a single cave. So to David's point about who his minions are, like Estelle and Kronos, he might count as his minions, right? But not ones that he gives a shit about because he'll eat them for a sack of gold. The Wyverns we think are his minions, but is there anyone else that is in like some sort of cult of the dragon type thing? Who are those weird fuckers in the tower that we haven't even met yet? You know, like are they Setites?
Absolutely.
Well, don't forget.
Or are they the cult of the dragon? Are they his minions? Are they the ones sitting on a big vault that needs a golden rod shoved into it? Like,
well, don't forget his last words, Mike. Both you and David actually, right? What he said about calling him a lord or the need to rule, right? You get the impression that minions are not even a thing. You know, there might be people you don't know. You have no reason to believe that people that worship him. Right. But what I was about to jump in. But he doesn't reciprocate.
Right.
Right. It's totally beneath him. Like he does not care. I brought this up in the Discord a little bit as well, but you have to understand, like the question obvious is why doesn't Cross just burn everything? And the reason is because Cross is hyper intelligent and what he wants is treasure. But he knows that he must rely on the constant flow of adventurers to bring that up out of the depths, right? He knows he's sitting on a ton of treasure, but the only way he can get it is if small people bring it up for him. And he's also smart enough to realize that these people congregate and refresh themselves at the Broken Head. So therefore, he allows them to continue because he knows that it furthers his own ends, right? But that's as far as it goes, as far as you're able to conclude, right?
Yeah, and what I would say on top of that, which again is pure speculation on my part, but we were doing a bit of this talk. I mean, me and Matt were, a bunch of it on Discord. But I'm trying to deduce with very, very partial information what that means in terms of like a balance versus an imbalance, right? Like, so for instance, us pissing off the dragon, if we commit to that, right, has the risk of him trying to fucking kill us if we go out above ground anywhere, right? The question is, if what he wants, even if all he wants, if he has no allegiances to anyone, if all he wants is loot, and only way he can get it is from people going to the dungeon, if he starts killing every single person in the valley and on the plateau and search for us, he no longer has a source for that.
Correct.
He has killed his own economy.
Correct.
By seeking revenge, which means there is some leverage that we have, even as weak people.
Yes.
Even as weak people, we have leverage because we know that he needs something, even if it's far exceeding us and his power far exceeding us, that we can play into, even as as power bottoms. You know what I mean? Like, that is what we got to do, dude. We got to be the best in the fucking game, y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it, right? Now, how we do it, whether it will succeed, different question altogether. But I think that's actually, in a fucked up way, it's the most leverage we might actually manage is by pissing him off in that criteria, rather than just supplicating ourselves to him, right? Because now, what do we do? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to get into the whole thing we talked about on Discord, but I think it's really interesting.
You hit upon a key thing that I was hoping that you guys would conclude was that there is some leverage to be gained there, right? He needs small people, right? He needs them, and so you're now aware of that, right? You might want to ask yourselves, like at the time of the meeting with Cross, why didn't you bluff about the golden rod, right? If he wants,
didn't think it was magic.
Yeah, but well, what I'm saying is if you know that he wanted it, but that it was completely dependent. His knowledge is that you are the ones that had it, and that he wanted that back more than anything else. Like he desires to have it back. You could have said, if you kill us, if you harm us, you'll never get the golden rod.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then
Which
what?
is amazing.
Right?
Exactly.
Leverage once again. Right? So there are little holes. You know, it's a dangerous game to play. Very dangerous.
But it's so fun because of it.
You know, if we're like, you kill us and you'll never get your golden rod, he's like, well, what if I kill that one? You know,
True.
That's
true.
what I was worried about.
Very true, Mike.
Little does he know that we have infinite characters.
Yeah, I wonder which one he'd pick.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Mike. Yeah, it's a very dangerous game. A very dangerous game.
It is, and I'm not suggesting that we use the stable to protect our most loved characters. I think putting them out there and risking them has a benefit and a consequence, right? Like having Avaricios out there now or next time, or is a far more potent leverage in many ways, and also the far more risk of losing him than it is bringing a level 1 out there. Mm-hmm. But it is something to consider when we talk about these things.
Can I ask a question about the beginning of the session that I missed?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
If Avaricios is not with us on this venture, right? But you did get a rest. Why did you not stock up on all healing spells and throw them on Yost and Mort?
I do have healing spells, and I can throw them on Yost and Mort if we want.
Retroactively. I mean, Ted's over here all whining and shit about Yost 7 hit points as if the rest of us have any more than that, you know?
Oh, it's so hard for the... I'm kidding.
We do have to think about protecting our most valuable asset, which is not Ted. It's Yost.
Yeah. Right. But, I mean, yeah, Yost has the potential to have the most...
I'm going to bed.
Yeah. I know Ted's got to go.
We love you, bud.
But yeah, with Njal out of the picture, at least for this delve, Yost is your big front line if you can pump him up, you know.
Yeah. Well,
you need me to be here
next time, tell the cleric that your guy needs healing.
I mean, like we had a plan that involved certain spells that we needed. It did not involve fully going for all buff healing. We had, you know, and so when I brought up the hit points, it wasn't to whine. It was so that you didn't count on Yost being this carrying killer. Like, no, he's got 7 hit points. You know, combat is possible, but don't count on it. We should think of other things because he's not wearing armor and he's got no hit points.
Yeah.
Factor accordingly. As he did when he said, don't, you know, he didn't whine about his hit points at the time of healing spells being memorized because he knew we needed mist and silence and stuff like that. So
absolutely. Yeah. You know, I think we did a great job. Nothing to regret.
You can still cast them if you decide that you want to get into a fight. You could cast them and pump up Yost.
I've got them.
That's all.
I've got them.
Great use of spells though.
You missed out on like one of the primary rules of like old school playing, and that's wheedling at the cleric for healing spells. That's like
yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on, man. That's basic 101 stuff right there.
If it were Mort, I might have wheedled more, but Yost is stoic. Yost is very stoic.
You've gotten some mileage out of that silence spell, though. Holy crap. Has that been good for you? And the combo
and invisibility. Such a good thing.
That started with Dolmenwood and it's continued since. It is hard for me to think of a spell I like more right now than silence.
It's so good.
It's so high. It's so high up there.
Yeah. It's good.
Nice,
I am worried about what happens when we get to the actual stash. And we've used all of these like big gun spells. And if we go in there and there's like 5 Blind Dark cohort dudes and Codswallop standing there with crossbows, I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a tricky thing.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very unwise decision to attempt to rest in this general area if you want to regain spells.
Can't rest. We're on a clock, baby.
Oh, you're on the clock too. Yeah, of course. Yep.
All right, guys.
Cool. All right, very fun. I'm going to get to editing, but that was